Yali no momachtika kiniktistok. How's everybody doing? This is the first presentation of the semester. It's about understanding race, class, and ethnicity. We're going to focus on deconstructing what race, class, and ethnicity means within society today. So first we're going to take a sociological perspective and understand the concepts of race, class, and ethnicity. And then what I want to do is get us to a place where we're going to challenge these social constructs. Okay, so the presentation outline. We're going to look at what is a subordinate group, the different types of subordinate groups. And then we're going to ask the question, does race matter? After we do all that, we're going to look at the difference between American studies, cultural studies, and ethnic studies. Now, when I use the term subordinate, remember we're looking at it from a sociological perspective. This is not a term that I use in my daily life. So let's really break down what this means. So a minority group can be considered a subordinate group. Why do you ask? Because they have less control or power over their own lives than do members of the majority or dominant society. So because of this form of oppression, the narrative is created that minority groups are socially and financially dependent on the government system. It argues that they don't have the same understanding for success, education, wealth, or the pursuit of happiness. And we all know that that is just not the case. So how does a minority group become a subordinate group? There's 5 characteristics that determine this idea of being subordinate. Unequal treatment, distinguishing physical or cultural traits, awareness of subordination, and in-group marriage. Those who are identified as minority are usually defined by race, class, ethnicity, religion, and gender. And class can be used as an identifier for a subordinate group or a dominant group, so it's really kind of a different social construct where power and privilege are playing out. So the point I'm trying to make is that minority groups are oppressed in terms of power and privilege. The social importance of race is derived from a process of racial formation. Immigration, annexation, and colonialism are all processes that make and create subordinate groups, and significant for racial oppression in the United States is the difference between assimilation and pluralism. So again, I want to stress to everybody, this is the definitions of the social constructs, not my personal or even professional perspectives of these terms. So what do these terms mean? What does race, ethnicity, class, gender, and religion mean? So looking from within a sociological lens, we're going to define the boundaries of what race, class, gender, and religion are. First are racial groups. This is reserved for minorities and corresponding majorities that are socially set apart because of obvious physical differences. Emphasis on physical differences rather than cultural differences are key, although some racial groups have unique cultural differences. So what are the racial identifiers? Asian, Black, White, American Indian, Alaskan Native. Something that I want everybody to think about is, why isn't Hispanic or Latino considered a race? Next up are ethnic groups. They're differentiated from the dominant group based on cultural differences, such as language, attitudes towards the family structures, parenting, food, and other lifestyle practices. What also sets them apart is their national origin and distinctive cultural practices. Now, what can be kind of confusing is that Native Americans can fall within the construct of an ethnic group as well as a racial group. Same thing with Black communities, same thing with Asian communities. There is, in all reality, no real definition of the difference between ethnic and racial. And later in this presentation, we'll get to understand why. Hispanic and Latino does fall under this category, mainly because they are not considered a racial group. Now, in the United States, Protestants make up the dominant group, outnumbering all other religions. Religions such as Islam, Catholicism, and Buddhism are considered minority religions based off membership numbers. Now, gender groups also make up social constructs within society today. For example, women do experience discrimination and prejudice due to their physical differences between males. women of color also face prejudice and discrimination because of their racial, ethnic, religious, and class affiliation. This is called a double jeopardy in sociology. However, within ethnic studies, it is called intersectionality, a term that was coined by Gloria Anzaldúa within the Chicana feminist movement. Another group within the gender construct that faces discrimination is those who identify within the LGBTQ2 community. Because they don't fit into the social constructs of society today, they experience high rates of violence and discrimination towards them. Okay, so now we have researched the social constructs of race, class, ethnicity, gender, religion. We've deconstructed what they mean in regards to Western society, overall dominant society. The question then becomes for us in this class: does race matter? Is race something that is real that we experience? Is it just a social construct? What role does race, class, and ethnicity play in our lives today? Right? So, does race matter? Yes, race does matter. Race is a social construct that is played out all day, every day. Race, class, gender, ethnicity are all social constructs, and they all determine the outcomes in our life within society today. It does matter. Race does matter. That is why there are no real rules or clear definitions around these concepts, around race, around ethnicity, around what it means to be of a specific gender group, or even religion, because they're all social constructs. And because they're social constructs, those in power can shape and mold them to the design that meets their needs over ours. So where did this idea of race begin? How did it start? Who were the people that created the concept of race? So before we get into that, let's understand this. One, we cannot identify distinctive physical characteristics for a group of people in the way that we identify animal species. The idea of a biological race is based on a mistaken notion of a genetically isolated human group. And biologically, there are no pure distinct races. So if there's no pure distinct race, what makes up this idea of race? Well, it has become important because of the meaning people have attached to it. Race is a social construction from which the process benefits the oppressor, who defines who is privileged and who is not. The acceptance of race in society as a legitimate category allows for racial hierarchies to emerge and benefit the dominant quote-unquote races. So that's what we're really going to study within this class this semester, is this idea of race, class, and ethnicity as a social construct, and the people who benefit from it. We would like to think that it's just primarily white settler society. But in reality, even men of color benefit from social constructs in a way that women of color don't benefit from it. Cisgendered people of color benefit from social constructs in a way that non-cisgendered people of color don't benefit from it. So we're going to break down how these constructs play out in our everyday life and how they play out in terms of power and privilege. But before we get further into this conversation, because this will take a whole semester, let's now look at the three different areas of study that we are going to use in order to understand race, class, and ethnicity. First, let's look at ethnic studies. What I want y'all to do is, once we're done with the presentation, click out of the PowerPoint and go to Why Ethnic Studies Matters video. It's a YouTube video I'll put as a link. Watch the video. Learn about why ethnic studies matters in understanding the social constructs that we're about to analyze. Then I would like for y'all to look at American studies. I will place the link to an article online that explains what American studies is and why it's important. From there, then I want you to do some analysis around cultural studies. And there's going to be a short video, it's a silent video, but it's going to explain in detail the importance of cultural studies and the constructs that it operates from. Okay? Once we've looked at all these different approaches to understanding the social constructions of race, class, and ethnicity, then we can even start to move forward and look at it from a historical perspective of where it was created and why it was created and who created it. Okay, this is the end of this presentation. So, as I said earlier, go ahead, close out the PowerPoint, and now access the ethnic studies video. Why ethnic studies matters.